I hope that's enough time. We could keep reading through them all. Hopefully you have read through all of the letters because we can learn from them all. I'll start with a question about a ministry apprenticeship. Isn't a ministry apprenticeship supposed to be a sheltered experience of ministry? You know, a ministry apprenticeship, it's 2 years of trying ministry before you commit to maybe going to Bible college and taking a job in a church. It's being watched closely by someone and guided, so you know that someone's there to catch you if you fall or if you fail, and to pick up the pieces if anything goes wrong. Isn't that what a ministry apprenticeship is about? You can ask Kate, she's doing one at the moment. That's what I thought it was about until I did one. By the end of my first year as an apprentice back in 2010, our church leadership had split in two over conflict. I'd been diagnosed with a chronic disease, and one of our beloved leaders in our church had been publicly rebuked and stood down as a leader. At the same time, my trainer, the one who was supposed to be catching me when I fell, he decided to leave and go overseas as a missionary, which is a wonderful gospel decision, but terrible timing for me. I'd need a new trainer in the second year of my apprenticeship. But it wasn't that simple. See, sadly, the conflict in the church was so difficult, so live, that the leadership couldn't agree which way I should go for my second year. And they left me to decide and communicate with everyone which side I was going with. And either way, there was going to be hurt. And on both sides, I loved and respected the leaders. But there was such pain at that time, there was no way we could all be in the same room together. I still remember the sick feeling in the pit of my stomach as I went to the house of the leader who I was telling I wasn't going to join his team. At that same time, unrelated, one of the much loved and respected, long-serving leaders, elders of the church, was stood down for false teaching. There was a meeting, I remember, one night during the week. All the congregations came together to hear this announcement and to have his teaching corrected. The fallout was devastating. There were tears, and then accusations and arguments. Dozens of people left the church. One of the leaders later recalled some of the ferocious response towards the church leadership. He said, "People said that we were unloving, that we were unfair, that we were vindictive, that we were petty. One fellow sat me down and said, 'You may be doctrinally correct, but you are cold and loveless.'" This is towards the leadership of our church at that time. It was awful. Some of the remaining elders broke down. 2 of their wives were diagnosed with depression. See, my apprenticeship was revealing. You could say apocalyptic. Introduction to life in church. And actually, really, I was sheltered. What I went through was nothing compared to those who were in the thick of it. I'm not complaining. I learned so much, and God looked after us at that time. But it turns out there really is no sheltered experience of church, because church is church. And every apprentice I've seen come through our church, this church, has had similar trials and big challenges, if not bigger than mine, in their sheltered experience. See, the truth is, wherever you are in church and whatever your part is, there will be trouble. There'll be danger. That's the message of Revelation. Church at the end of the world is a battle. Last week in Revelation 1, we saw that the end of the world has come. We've seen Jesus go back to heaven. His work here on earth is done. And so God in heaven has given him all authority to rule and reign for eternity in glory over everything. Like the plunger being pushed, we know what happens next. Everything will be brought under Jesus. These are the days we're in, the end of the world. And it's a battle. In Revelation 2 and 3, Jesus addresses individually these 7 churches in Turkey. What's Turkey today? And the letter was to circulate to these 7 churches. And we see they have different situations and strengths and challenges and problems. But one main punchline in every letter, did you see it at the end? What does he say? There's a call out at the end. To the one who is victorious. See, every church is urged to reach victory. Some other translations say to the one who overcomes. See, it means getting past obstacles. There's things in the way, obstacles for every church. And see, the main point at the end of each part of the letter, for every church, you must battle. You must battle. We saw it in chapter 1. Remember how John greeted the churches in his introduction. Chapter 1. See how he introduces himself. I, John, your brother and companion in the suffering and the kingdom and the patient endurance that are ours in Jesus. See, Christian life at the end of the world, it's a companion in what? Suffering and endurance. See, John's in jail as he writes this. And he follows Jesus, who was killed, and we're companions with them both. So John's letter to the churches, Jesus' letter, is for us too. See, at the end of the message to each church, you would have heard as you read it together, he says, whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The churches. In other words, even though there's one specific part for 7 different churches, God is speaking to all of the churches. Hear what the Spirit says to the churches. And it's to be heard by anyone who has ears. If you have ears, hear this. The whole letter was to be read in all the churches. The number 7 is significant as well. 7 comes up a lot. In Revelation, if you've been reading through, you'll see 7. It's a number meaning completion, perfection, being finished. See, there were more than 7 churches in Asia. We know of the Colossian church at least. But by addressing these 7 churches, it's for all the churches, the complete church, every church. So these letters are for us, if we have ears to hear. Now, most readers who read Revelation are tempted to look for which church we are. That's how most people read it. But I think it's better to see the picture of the whole, the big picture, the portrait of the church that we get in these 7 churches, and see what we can learn from them all. So as we look at these 7 letters, we see 3 big threats emerging. And that's why he finishes saying we need to overcome, because there's big threats in these churches. So let's look at the 3. They're on your outline. And then we'll finish very briefly with how we overcome them with Jesus. So 3 dangerous threats. The first is persecution. 5 out of the 7 churches mention persecution. The Ephesians, they've endured hardship for Jesus' name. The Philadelphians, they've been sapped of their strength and pushed to deny Jesus. In Pergamum, the regional capital, a Roman city, a faithful Christian, Antipas, has been killed, it says. See, churches of Jesus will be opposed in the last days. Perhaps it's most severe in Smyrna, the second letter Mitch read out. Look at chapter 2, verse 9. Chapter 2, verse 9. I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid of what you're about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution to the point of death for 10 days. If you looked at a picture of Smyrna at the end of the first century, you'd see a prosperous city. Brilliant architecture, stadiums, libraries, theatres, temples. A thriving city on a beautiful harbour. A trade city, rich. But the Christians are in poverty. Why? Well, they didn't go along with their society. They wouldn't bow down to the Roman emperor as a god. They were excluded socially, economically. Ahead of them, Jesus says, is persecution, prison, death. In Australia, Christians have really had a rare position of respect and honour in our society. Did you know that half of the New South Wales local councils have a prayer at the beginning of their session, a Christian prayer? See, our country's been so richly blessed and enmeshed with Christian ideas and thinking, but there's been this huge change in the last 20, 30, 50 years, in recent decades. See, Christianity used to be seen as the good, the societal good. But now we're evil. Bigots, homophobes, against love, against equality and tolerance. I read one writer who put it like this. This resonated with me. He said that the testing question for me as a Christian kid used to be, do you believe dinosaurs existed? But now the question is, where do you stand on same-sex marriage? See, we used to be a little bit strange, maybe seen as naive or stupid. Now we're seen as dangerous. And it's become appropriate to attack Christians for our belief because we're dangerous. We're bad people. Not just laughable or repressed, but now shameful, harmful, repressive. And the Bible, God's word, is declared incompatible with human dignity and in conflict with fundamental human rights. Have you overheard a discussion at work or on the train of people angry about Christian views on some issue? Have you read the articles that triumphantly report the death of Christianity and the decline of the churches? Have you been tempted to believe that you are on the wrong side of history? Christians are losing employment opportunities. We've lost our seat at the cultural table. With some of the new laws being proposed, we could soon be put in jail for our beliefs. It's a real possibility. See, Sydney is the new Smyrna. Jesus says it's not the wrong side of history, it's normal history, it's expected. In fact, 2 Timothy 3:12 says, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. See, get used to being slandered. Get used to being excluded. Consider the possibility of being put in jail. Jesus warns us. Church at the end of the world means persecution. Get ready. The second threat is false teaching. We see it in various churches of the seven. At Ephesus, there's been false apostles coming in, but they've resisted. The church is commended. In Pergamum, it started to take root. Look at chapter 2, verse 14. There are some among you who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin so that they ate food sacrificed to idols and committed sexual immorality. Likewise, you also have those who hold to the teaching of the Nicolaitans. Similar in Thyatira, verse 20. I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. By her teaching, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. See, false teaching is a threat in the churches of Jesus. And some are falling for it. We read of false apostles, the Nicolaitans, Balaam, Jezebel. We don't actually know much about these groups. Really, what we have is what we have here. We don't have too much background, but we know that Balaam and Jezebel, well, they're like the pin-up deceivers, false teachers of the Old Testament. Balaam led Israel to join with the Moabites in sacrifices and sexual immorality. Jezebel, the wife of King Ahab, wicked king of Israel, introduced the worship of pagan gods into Israel. See, a common theme of the false teaching is a compromise with the world, with idolatry and sexual immorality that's going on in the society all around. See, as Christians, there'll always be a temptation to bend our teaching to what the world wants to hear. Say, in our day, religious tolerance. All religions are lovely and basically the same. We're all friends together against the world. There'll be a temptation to say what the world wants to hear. And there'll be a temptation to bend our teaching to say what we want to do. Say sexual freedom. In his final meeting with the leaders at Ephesus, the Apostle Paul warned them about the future in their church at Ephesus. Acts 20, verse 29. This is Paul, not John, speaking to the Ephesian church. I know that after I leave, savage wolves will come in among you and will not spare the flock. Even from your own number, men will arise and distort the truth in order to draw away disciples after them. See, false teaching comes from within. They're not out there, they're in here. They look like normal Christian leaders. Many church leaders today are calling for the church to modernize. See this recent article from the Times in London. It reports, almost half of the Church of England clergy respondents to a new poll would officiate at same-sex weddings if permitted to do so. Almost 2/3 said that the church should no longer teach that sex belonged only in marriage. Julia Baird, who attends a church in Sydney, writes in the Sydney Morning Herald about the Anglican Church's view on women. This was in the paper just last month. She says, this pure, distilled sexism once provoked outrage. Now it's seen as absurd, archaic, and inexplicable. Surely undervaluing and silencing women for decades in both flamboyant and secretive ways simply underwrites your own obsolescence. See, isn't the pressure of false teaching real? And there are churches around Sydney that are buckling under this pressure. And our society swings against Christianity. The urge will only get stronger for us. And in a hostile society, it's amazing how clear truth suddenly doesn't seem so clear anymore. to the church in Sardis, Jesus says, "What you have received and heard, hold it fast." Jesus warns the church at the end of the world, false teaching is a massive threat. Well, the first two threats really lead to the third one, disobedience. And for all but 2 of the 7 churches, this is an issue, sin. And probably in the ones that don't mention it as well. Jesus says he's coming in judgment. We've seen the people of Pergamum and Thyatira bowing to sexual sin and toying with idols. In Ephesus, there's the threat of the church dying through disobedience. He said he'll take their lampstand away. Their doctrine seems good. They haven't swallowed false teaching, but their love has grown cold. Isn't this a huge danger? We've got the right teaching. We say all the right things, but the love of Jesus that was there at first has gone cold. See, true faith overflows in loving service. Without it, you're not a real church. Similar in Sardis. Look at 3 verse 1. You have a reputation of being alive, but you're dead. Wake up. Strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have found your deeds unfinished in the sight of God. See, Sardis is a comfortable church, successful in human eyes, but a church that forgets it's in a battle. And if you forget you're in a battle, you won't make it to victory. See, they're perhaps in the most dangerous place. Sardis has fallen asleep and about to die. Jesus said he's found their deeds unfinished. They may not be doing all the wrong things, but they're not doing the right things. Love. In Laodicea, the church is rich materially, but lukewarm in faith. See, disobedience is a huge threat for the churches. It's a reality of church at the end of the world. One of the saddest things about church, if you go to a church for a while, it's seeing friends give in to sexual immorality, to drunkenness and partying, to wealth and career and material things, to lifestyle, to Sunday activities. I've seen church leaders I've worked with who have given in. Some friends from college, people who have led me as a Christian, who I looked up to. It's devastating. Often you can see it happening over time. First, there's some compromise with sin or a bad decision, then a softening to it, and then some justification. Gradually, there's a distancing away from God's people, giving up meeting together, and eventually we just lose touch. We've seen it happen. See, sin, disobedience kills. And if you're not awake, it will get you. So across the letters, we see 3 big threats: persecution, false teaching, disobedience. See, church at the end of the world is not a picnic. It's a battle. And Satan is in it. Did you notice Satan throughout these letters? He's mentioned many times. We know he's been defeated by Jesus at the cross, but he's angry. And he's going down, swinging. He wants to take us with him. Satan is behind all of these threats in the churches. See, church is not for the faint-hearted. Not for a comfortable Sunday morning. The reality of church before Jesus comes is sobering. Have you realized it? Are you awake? It's why Jesus gives us this revelation, so we can overcome with him. See, we need to go back to the glorious vision of Jesus in chapter 1. It's so important. Remember stunning Jesus in chapter 1. Chapters 2 and 3 show us why we need to see that Jesus in all his glory. See, in the heat of battle, we need him. At the start of each message to the 7 churches, we see snapshots of Jesus from chapter 1 mostly, as he introduces the message to each church. To the Ephesians, these are the words of him who holds the 7 stars in his right hand and walks among the 7 golden lampstands. To the Smyrnans, these are the words of him who is the first and last, who died and came to life again. To the Pergamese, to the church in Pergamum, him who has the sharp double-edged sword. To the church in Thyatira, he whose eyes are like blazing fire and whose feet are like burnished bronze. So on it goes. Jesus is the glorious one with the churches. There's no doubt in this letter who is in control. He rules. He's in command. He sees the churches. He knows them. He corrects them. He rebukes them. He warns them. He rewards them. 10 times through the letters, Jesus says, I know. Jesus knows our church. We're in his hand. I know who you are. I know what you're doing. I know the difficulties of where you live. I know what wicked people are doing to you. Jesus is in command. And he reminds us he's coming. We're struggling, but it's not an endless struggle. Jesus says, see, I'm coming soon. 7 times Jesus says, I'm coming. He's coming. And so what do we need to do in this battle? It's wait for Jesus. He's the victor. Hold on to him. Chapter 2, verse 10, be faithful. Chapter 2, verse 13, remain true to my name. Chapter 2, 25, hold on to what you have until I come. Chapter 3, verse 3, what you have received and heard, hold it fast. Chapter 3, verse 8, keep my word and don't deny my name. Chapter 3, verse 10, endure patiently. Chapter 3, verse 11, hold on to what you have. It's pretty clear, isn't it? Keep, hold, endure, remain, be faithful. Jesus has won the victory. He's conquered sin, death, Satan for us. He's freed us from our sins by his blood. Nothing can stand against us. Just wait. He's coming. If you're afraid of persecution, do not fear. Look to Jesus and the crown of life to come. If you're falling for false teaching, hold on. Hear the words of the Amen, the faithful and true witness, with a sword in his mouth and a voice like a waterfall. If you're sinning, repent. Turn back. Don't give in. Look to Jesus, the one with eyes like blazing fire and feet like burnished bronze, who will crush every enemy before him. See, these are difficult chapters, friends. But we're with Jesus. See the tenderness of our Lord. His patient warning. His loving rebuke and discipline. To all those under threat, he says, come to me again. Come through the gospel for eternal riches. True victory. Real vision. Chapter 3, verse 20. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person, and they with me. See, at the start of the message to each church, we're strengthened by this vision of Jesus. And at the end of each message, we get a picture of the rewards that he offers to those who reach the victory. And these pictures come mostly from the end chapters of Revelation, the vision we're still to look at, the final chapters, the new creation. See what we have with Jesus. The tree of life in the paradise of God. White victory robes. Our name acknowledged before God and the angels, written in the book of life. A seat on Christ's throne. A share in his reign over the nations. See what glorious glories we have to come with our glorious Lord. Friends, church at the end of the world is not easy. It's a battle. But Jesus has overcome. Stand up and overcome with him. Let's pray.